The ranch woke before the sun. Wind slid low across the open land, stirring dust along the fence posts and bending the tall grass like it was bowing to something unseen. The sky was pale and wide, still holding the night at its edges. He stood at the gate alone, a tall man, broad shoulders, a coat worn smooth by years of work. In his hand was a single sheet of paper, folded and unfolded so many times the creases had nearly torn through. Farmhand wanted room, pay, honest work. He had written it weeks ago, tacked it to the post office board in town, waited, listened for hoofbeats that never came. No one answered. He was used to silence. The ranch was full of it. Then something moved at the end of the road. At first, he thought it was heat rising from the dirt, or a stray shadow stretching where it shouldn't. He narrowed his eyes and stepped close to the fence. It was a person, small, still, standing where the road met his land. She didn't wave, didn't call out, didn't move closer. She just stood there. As the light grew, he saw her clearly. A girl, young but not a child. Dark hair pulled back badly, loose strands framing a face marked by dust and exhaustion. Her dress was thin, torn at the hem. Her hands were clenched at her sides, and her feet bare. No boots, no shoes, just skin against dirt and stone. She looked up at the ranch house, then back at him. Her eyes were deep and careful, like someone who had learned the cost of being noticed. He waited for her to speak. She didn't. The wind passed between them. The gate creaked softly. He thought of turning back, thought of all the reasons he should. The town, the looks, the trouble this would bring. But she didn't ask for anything. She only reached into the small cloth bundle she carried and pulled out a crumpled paper, the same words he had written, smudged now from travel. She held it out with both hands. For the first time in years, his chest tightened. He had asked for a farmhand. Instead, fate had sent him a shoeless Chinese girl who looked like she had walked through hell just to stand at his gate. And as the sun finally rose over the land, one quiet question hung between them. What happens if he lets her stay? He opened the gate. The hinges groaned like they hadn't been used in a while. Maybe they hadn't. Visitors were rare. Help even rarer. She flinched at the sound. He noticed that. "Morning," he said gently. His voice sounded rough to his own ears, like it had forgotten how to speak to people. She nodded once. Careful, respectful, still silent. Up close, he could see more. The faint cut along her heel. Dirt packed under her nails. The way her shoulders stayed tense, as if she expected the ground itself to turn against her. He stepped aside, giving her room to enter. She hesitated. Only when he moved farther back did she cross the threshold, as if the land itself needed permission. The ranch stretched wide behind him, acres of dry earth and stubborn grass. A place built with money, yes, but paid for in years of loneliness. The house stood solid and plain, more shelter than home. "I'm Eli Turner," he said after a moment. She looked at his mouth when he spoke, then up at his eyes. "May," she said softly. Just one word. He nodded, like that was enough. Inside, the house smelled of coffee gone cold and leather. He poured water and set the cup on the table. She stared at it, unsure. "It's yours," he said. She picked it up with both hands and drank slowly, like she was afraid it might disappear. He watched without meaning to. Weeks ago, he had told himself he didn't need anyone, that the ranch was easier without voices, without memories pressing in at night. He had money, land, control. But as she stood there, barefoot on his wooden floor, he felt the old quiet shift. The quiet had weight now. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Heat settled in. A day like any other, except it wasn't. He explained the work in simple words. Feeding horses, mending fence, cooking if she knew how. He didn't ask questions he wasn't ready to hear answers to. She nodded at everything. "I pay fair," he said. "You stay if you want. You leave if you don't." That made her look up. Leave. The word landed heavy. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture he didn't fully understand but felt in his chest. Gratitude. Relief. Something close to fear letting go. In town they would talk. He knew that already. A Chinese girl on his land would not go unnoticed. There were rules, unwritten ones, cruel ones, but this land was his. And for the first time in a long while, he felt something stir beneath the routine of survival. Hope, maybe, or trouble. As the day wore on and May stepped carefully into the work of the ranch, Eli watched from a distance, pretending not to notice how the empty place beside him no longer felt quite so empty. Not yet, but it was changing. May moved quietly through the ranch, her bare feet soft against the rough wooden floor and dry earth outside. She said little, but her eyes told stories Eli couldn't yet read. There was a weight behind them, something heavy and unspoken. She kept her gaze low, watching the ground more than the sky. When she touched the horses, her hands trembled just slightly, but she was gentle. The animals seemed to sense it, nuzzling her with cautious trust. Eli noticed how she flinched at sudden noises. The snap of a twig, the sharp whistle of the wind, like shadows still haunted her. She carried a small bundle everywhere. A few worn clothes, a frayed blanket, a faded photograph Eli glimpsed once but never asked about. Her English was broken, halting, but clear enough when she spoke her name. May. No last name. No family mention. Just that one word, heavy with mystery. One evening, after a long day in the sun, May sat on the porch steps, watching the horizon bleed colors of orange and purple. Eli joined her, careful not to crowd the silence. She pulled her knees close, arms wrapped around them. "May," he said softly, "where you come from?" She looked at him, eyes glistening but silent. The answer was locked away somewhere deeper than words. Days passed, and still the quiet between them grew, filled with meaning. She didn't ask for kindness, but she accepted it. A warm meal, a dry bed, a pair of worn boots Eli left by the door. The ranch felt different with her there, less lonely, but more fragile, because beneath May's silence was a secret, that whisper on the wind, waiting to break free. And Eli knew that letting her stay might bring salvation or destruction. The days settled into a rhythm neither expected. May rose with the sun, moving through the ranch with quiet determination. She worked tirelessly, hands roughening as she mended fences, fed horses, and hauled water. Though she rarely spoke, her presence filled the spaces Eli had long left empty. He began to notice the small things. The way she wiped sweat from her brow with a worn sleeve, how she paused to watch a hawk circle above, or the faint smile that flickered when a colt nuzzled her hand. Eli started leaving a pair of old boots by the door, hoping she might wear them. One morning, he found them placed neatly at the foot of her bed. She hadn't worn them yet, but the gesture spoke volumes. They shared meals in silence, the sun casting long shadows across the porch where they often sat side by side at day's end. Words felt unnecessary. Trust grew through shared labor and quiet moments. One evening, a breeze stirred the campfire embers as Eli reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from May's face. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Neither spoke, neither moved. In that stillness, something deep and unspoken passed between them. A fragile hope, fragile and new. Yet, beneath the warmth of their growing bond, the shadow of the outside world loomed, waiting to test the strength of what had begun. The peace they had carved out on the ranch was fragile, like dry tinder waiting for a spark. Word of May's presence spread to the nearby town faster than Eli had hoped. Whispers followed her footsteps, curious, suspicious, even hostile. Some men spat warnings when they crossed Eli on the dusty main street. "That girl don't belong here," one sneered. "You're asking for trouble." Others gave cold looks, their eyes dark with old fears and prejudice. The sheriff himself approached Eli one afternoon, voice low but firm. "Turn her away," he said. "There's talk of trouble. Folks don't take kindly to outsiders, especially Chinese." Eli's jaw tightened. This land was his. He'd built it with sweat and blood. He wasn't about to send May away because of their fears. But the danger was real. One evening, May sat by the fire, shoulders trembling as she recounted, in broken English, fragments of her past, a labor camp, lost family, nights spent running from men who wanted to own her. Eli listened, anger burning beneath his calm exterior. He hated the world that brought her here so broken and scared. His own heart wrestled with doubt. Could he protect her from a town that saw her as a threat? Could love survive in a place so cold? The nights grew colder and the shadows longer. But even as the walls closed in, Eli and May's bond only grew stronger, a silent promise that they would face the storm together, no matter the cost. The day came like a thunderclap. The whole town seemed to gather at the edge of Eli's ranch, a restless crowd bristling with suspicion and anger. Voices rose, demanding May leave. "She doesn't belong here," some shouted. "This land ain't for outsiders." May stood at Eli's side, pale but unwavering, her bare feet dug into the dry earth, the boots he'd left by the door forgotten. She clutched the small bundle tightly, ready to disappear into the dust if she had to. Eli felt the weight of every pair of eyes burning into him. Friends, neighbors, enemies, all waiting for his answer. His heart thundered, but his voice was steady. "She stays," he said, stepping forward. A hush fell. "You won't turn her away," he said, meeting the sheriff's cold gaze. The crowd murmured, some in disbelief, others in grudging respect. May's eyes locked with Eli's. For the first time, she spoke clearly. "I stay," she said, voice quiet but firm. It was more than words. It was a promise, a choice. Together, they faced the storm, not as two strangers, but as something unbreakable. The world around them might be harsh and unforgiving, but here, on this land, love had made its stand. The tension hung thick in the air, like a storm ready to break. The townsfolk's murmurs rippled into uneasy silence as Eli and May stood side by side, facing the crowd's wrath. Some of the men stepped forward, fists clenched, voices sharp with anger. Threats were whispered and shouted, warnings that this defiance wouldn't be tolerated. But Eli didn't flinch. His gaze hardened as he raised a hand, signaling calm. "This land is mine," he said, voice steady but carrying the weight of years of loneliness and pain. "She has earned her place here, same as anyone." May, steady now, met each stare with a quiet strength that surprised even Eli. Then came the moment. The sheriff stepped forward, authority in his eyes. The law could sway the crowd, and the decision would be final. But something shifted. The sheriff nodded slowly, respect flickering behind his gaze. "You got a deal," he said, his voice low but clear. "She stays." Relief washed over Eli like rain after drought. May's eyes glistened with tears, not just in the fear that had gripped her for so long, but from something new. Belonging. That night, they sat by the fire, the flickering flames warming more than just their bodies. May finally spoke more freely, sharing pieces of her past, the pain, the loss, the journey that brought her here. Eli listened without interruption, holding space for every unspoken sorrow. In the quiet, love bloomed, slow, steady, and fierce. They were two broken souls, healing together on a land that had once been empty but was now alive with hope. Seasons changed, and with them, the ranch transformed. What was once a place of solitude grew warm with life. Soft footsteps, laughter whispered in the wind, and the steady rhythm of two hearts beating in time. May no longer walk barefoot, but the worn boots she once hesitated to wear still sat by the door, a quiet reminder of where she had been and how far she had come. Eli watched her from the porch one evening, the sun dipping low, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. She smiled at something only he could see, a secret shared between two souls who had found refuge in each other. The past, with all its shadows and scars, had not disappeared. But here, on this land, they had built something stronger. A love that wasn't loud or flashy. A love that was steady, enduring, forever. And as the stars blinked awake overhead, Eli thought quietly to himself, she came with nothing and stayed forever.